Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to begin with the next session, which is Digital Solutions in Healthcare Developed by India for India. And we are going to ask the experts what solutions they foresee. Now, we have Dr. Praveen Gedam, Additional CEO, National Health Authority, who's going to be chairing this session. So let me take a moment to introduce him. Dr. Praveen Gedam, an Indian Administrative Services Officer, currently Additional CEO for the National Health Authority, and has spoken for the NHA's response to the COVID-19 pandemic in India and advocacy of farmers' access to healthcare. Also for developing digital health services throughout India and many more initiatives undertaken by him. Warm welcome to you, sir. Now, let me take the privilege of introducing our moderator, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture. Mr. Karan Singh, MD, Bain and Company. He's a leader in Bain's healthcare practice. He was one of the founding partners who helped establish Bain's India business in 2006 and has more than 20 years of management consulting experience across Asia, Europe, and the United States. Mr. Karan Singh, the MD of Bain and Company, was most recently the leader of Bain's healthcare practice in Asia Pacific, leading projects across healthcare delivery, medical devices, and pharmaceuticals. And his expertise includes transformation, turnaround, growth strategy, mergers, acquisitions, and many more. Welcome, sir. Let me now take the privilege of introducing our experts quickly. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Dr. Anupam Sibal, Group Medical Director, Apollo Hospitals Group, and Professor Dr. Anupam Sibal, ladies and gentlemen, has been a pediatrician for 25 years. He established the division of pediatric gastroenterology and hepatology in 1997 at Apollo Hospital, Delhi, and he helped set up the first successful liver transplant program in India in 1998 at Apollo Hospitals, Delhi. Warm welcome, sir. Let me introduce our other expert, Mr. Shashank ND, the co-founder and CEO of Practo. He is responsible for the overall vision and direction of the company while maintaining an active role in building Practo's products. Warm welcome to you, sir. Also, in fact, 30 under 30 list of young influential people to watch by Forbes in 2015. He has recently been featured there. So once again, a warm welcome to Mr. Shashank. Let me now introduce Mr. Shishir Agarwal. Mr. Shishir Agarwal is the MD of Terumo India Private Limited, and Mr. Shishir Agarwal as the Managing Director of Terumo. Since 2019, he holds responsibility for Terumo's business in India for cardiac and vascular and hospital product segments. He has over 20 years of work experience in the medical devices with Johnson & Johnson across different geographies. Warm welcome to you, sir. With that, I'm now going to hand over the proceedings in the able hands of our moderator, Mr. Karan Singh, who's going to probably give it to the chair first to set the context, sir, and thereafter initiate the discussions. Mr. Singh, all yours.
Thank you. And just for everyone's benefit, just wanted to reiterate that this is really the session is about digital solutions in healthcare developed by India for India. So just in case it's a different topic you're looking for, you're then in the wrong room. So with that, I'm just going to, I think we all recognize the digital opportunities for real is a game changer and is highly disruptive. To state the obvious, as Aishwarya said, we've got a rock star of panelists here. Shashank, I didn't realize how young you are. It's great to be in a group with such eminent people, but also the young in the group. What we'll plan for is, given we only have 30 minutes, I'll spend maybe 5 minutes just very briefly setting the context. And then we'll turn it over to our 4 key panelists to share their views and their perspectives. And that's really what we are all looking forward to. Please do send in your questions in the chat box. We will try and keep 5-10 minutes in the end to take your questions. So let me start by very quickly setting the context at the very highest level. I think we all recognize, the size of the internet penetration and the size of the internet, the online market in India. So this is over 600 million. And if you look on the right-hand side, we are about 7 years behind China. This is projected to get to an internet penetration of over 1 billion. So it's a very sizable market. Interestingly, if you look at this page, I think we are beyond the internet users. There's a very interesting trend of people moving from evolving to become service transactors, and the implications for healthcare services and that adoption will dramatically change as you see people getting more used to going from internet usage, social usage to product and service usage. I think we are also seeing a explosion in the health tech landscape. And we're seeing new players, we're seeing new digital business models. And if you look at the funding that has taken place in this market in the last 2 years, this is about 2 billion, over 210 startups. And overall, there's about 37 to 40 unicorns here. So it's great to see the money pouring in, and the money pouring into curative options, e-pharmacy being the biggest one, telemed, the enablers like the pharma enablers, the analytic enablers. And then also it's great to see us think about or money coming into the early part of the patient corridor when it comes to preventive care as well. So this is a very, very significant development, and I think we're just getting started. I think COVID has provided a huge fillip for digital and for digital health adoption. A very interesting chart, if you look at how digital adoption has really exploded during COVID times, and we'll talk and we'll get Shashank and Anupam and others to talk about digital and telehealth and telemedicine adoption, which I think is a huge step forward. And I think a lot of credit needs to be given to the government that really very quickly came out with telehealth guidelines. And as a result, we are also starting to see huge adoption of new models in a span of 1 year. eSanjeevani is over 300 million. And then we will hear from Praveen in terms of the very bold aspiration when it comes to the government's plans for digital health and NDHM as well. So tremendous change in the last year, tremendous outlook, and this can be a total game changer for the industry. And the last page I'll share is, this is some inputs from the Nat Health leadership in terms of what some of the priorities could be for the government as we think about the roadmap for digital health going forward. So Praveen, I'll actually, this is a little bit more for you as we are going to listen to you, but this is some of the inputs from the leadership team that I'm sure you will address. So with that, I'm going to call Praveen to share his thoughts as a session chair and just help us with the digital vision, with some of the key changes in terms of tech and data, and some of the collaboration opportunities that you see going forward. And then with that, I'll just have Anupam and then Shishir and then Shashank follow. So Praveen, if you're on, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Karan. Just to kick off and to explain what we are looking forward to in the National Digital Health Mission. Now, when we talk about any initiative of government, generally it is a scheme or a program in which there is specific criteria. This is much more than that. The National Digital Health Blueprint actually is a vision rather than a specific scheme, which talks about the way India should move forward in the digital health space. And after extensive consultation with experts and stakeholders, this NDHB was formulated. Unlike in some countries such as UK, where we have significant public sector, it's largely public sector driven healthcare managed by one provider, NHS. So it becomes very easy to introduce a digital health solution in such systems. But India is a different case. We have huge private sector and at the same time huge public sector managed by different states, different companies. So it is fragmented in real sense. And unlike in case of USA, where 3 or 4 major players form a significant chunk of digital health space, we have hundreds of players, and I don't think there is any one which is having more than 5% share of the Indian market. So this is a very peculiar situation. We are probably, if you say for practical purpose, we are 36 states and union territories, each of the size of a country. So this requires efforts towards convergence, integration of all these disparate systems, bring in the uniformity, because we have to live with this fragmentation and this multiple type of participation. And this is what exactly is envisaged in the NDHB, implementation of, we are calling it National Digital Health Mission. I'm happy to share that we have rolled out the pilot in 6 union territories and looking forward to roll it out further all over India. We also are appreciate the fact that private sector is going to play a significant role, and the role of government is kept to bare minimum which one can expect in a digital ecosystem. So we are confined our role to creation of registries, obviously unique identity to each entity, be it a patient, doctor, facility. That is going to be the key for any digital health system, and therefore that role has been taken over by government. Everything else, for all practical purpose, private sector is welcome once this platform is ready. In fact, it has been rolled out in these 6 UTs. So in such a scenario where we see private sector to come together, so they are having various HMIS, LMIS solutions which are already running in a particular group of hospitals, or if they are service provider, then their clients. So we want them to come together in a uniform way, in a synergized way, and we do require some type of nudge or some push towards that uniformity, which we are doing broadly into track. One is a governance or administrative track or policy track, where we have laid out guidelines such as health information provider guideline, health information user guideline, guidelines for sandbox, health data management policy, which tries to bring on this uniformity and have some rules of game to ensure level playing field, privacy, security, confidentiality, and at the same time interest of patient in our mind. Second is for the tech side. We cannot have different systems working when we finally expect machine to learn and use AI to help the human beings. So we are trying to lay down the standards which are already proposed by NDHB, so that, for example, FHIR or SNOMED City is the one which we request, not mandate, but request to implement, so that the ecosystem comes to reality sooner than the later. I understand this is a long journey. It's not going to be an overnight kind of tectonic shift, but I request Nat Health, and Nat Health is in a very good position to come forward and support us. And I request all the private players in the digital health ecosystem and healthcare ecosystem to take forward this initiative, which we have come thus far with your help only. We have already made our sandbox live. So not only your solutions like HMIS, LMIS needs to be integrated for the larger benefit of healthcare providers as well as patients, but additional products as health locker, where you can keep health records from various health information providers at one place, so that longitudinal medical history is there, or a facility to search for desired healthcare provider, be it a hospital or a doctor based on certain criteria, or telemedicine. All these things are the areas where we look forward to collaboration with you all. And it's going to be an exciting journey, difficult but very exciting. And I request today to give your inputs, which I can note down, so that we can do this journey in much smoother and a faster way. Thank you once again for having me here. I will be very happy to take questions now or at the end of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Praveen. I think we'll take it at the end of the session. Maybe we'll move to Anupam. And Anupam, you have such deep experience on the provider side. So why don't I just turn it over to you and have you talk first about the COVID impact on the digital delivery, on the digital healthcare delivery sector.
Thank you so much, Karan. Great presentation, Praveen ji, and thank you to Nat Health for inviting me. And this is such a stellar panel, Shishir and Shashank. So nice to be with you. So if we look at what we've achieved, I think we have, and there have been numerous reports that have been published, between a 3 to a 7 year acceleration when it comes to digital health, from where we were to where we are today. So that's pretty significant, 3 to 7 year gain. So let me sort of look at three groups that are extremely important when we look at digital health. The first is clinicians, the second is patients, and the third is, the administrators, everybody who provides care. What we are seeing among clinicians is an acceptance to think digital. And that in itself is pretty significant, because it's very hard convincing very well-read people who really take quite some time to be convinced. And this is not me, but this was published in The Lancet in 1997, where it was written, it takes 50 years to get a wrong idea out of medicine and 100 years to get a right one into medicine. So, it requires a lot of patience. And I think what we are seeing here is very positive. We have a classical example in Apollo 24/7. Physicians are onboarding. And what we are seeing is that about 70% of consultations actually can take place through telemedicine. And this is something that doctors are very comfortable with. I personally, as a clinician, have been very comfortable with this. And you really need to get in a patient into a healthcare facility if you have a complex exam to do, or you have an intervention, whether it's a diagnostic intervention or a therapeutic intervention. But 70% managing at home digitally is quite remarkable. I think digital radiology, we are seeing in Apollo Radiology International, we are seeing traction. Digital pathology has become very important for us. And now we have 30 centers where we are able to report slides digitally. eICU was a huge boon. We saw that when COVID ICU beds were getting occupied and there wasn't enough expertise available physically, and there was traction like we've never seen before. Clinicians are now thinking of, hey, how can I minimize stay? So during the COVID phase, we've done daycare hip replacements, we've done daycare knee replacements, and we've been talking about it for a while, but actually we saw results because the patients wanted to go out fast and doctors were willing to be able to make the adjustments that they needed to in the protocols. Robotics is becoming more and more important because we know that the average length of stay is much lower with robotics. If we look at interventions, mitra clips, we did 4 mitra clips in one day, TAVI, because people don't want to be in hospital for 10 days. So you get in a mitra clip for, a mitral valve disease, you're out the next day. AI machine learning, for example, just 2 examples, and there are several that we've been involved in with AI and stroke to be able to give advice on whether thrombolysis is needed or not, and looking at WhatsApp images to be able to do that, which are AI based, or AI based CT reporting in COVID, when you don't get access to a radiologist who can comment on a CT and you have a technician who's running the CT exam. And for COVID management, we ran a machine learning model that we looked at 23 parameters, clinical and lab, that could predict death at 7 days or 28 days on admission. And this is something that's just going to be published. If we look at research collaboration, I think the kind of collaboration that we've seen this time around, we haven't seen before, whether it's in diagnostic kits, vaccines, whether it's medication, and the number of papers that we've been able to churn out. There's something like 5,000 papers that have come out on COVID from India. AIIMS Delhi's published 180 papers, Apollo's published 167 papers. And this has been a lot of collaboration across institutions, public, private, India, overseas. An acceptance for simulation training. And I give an example of ventilation training that we started for COVID, and 163,000 people trained outside the Apollo ecosystem using simulation, because there was a felt need at that point in time that people needed to upskill their knowledge on ventilation. And I think one of the biggest things that has come out for us has been the collaboration with GAPIO, which is the Global Association of Physicians of Indian Origin. 1.2 million doctors of Indian origin outside and in India. And we got everybody onto one platform, the Global Indian Physicians Collaborative. And I think that helped us a lot because we had lead time of about 6 to 8 weeks in India in terms of management. So what was happening in Europe and America was shared by the clinicians. And that, I think, gave us a head start. And so this is something that we haven't seen before, the kind of collaboration. Now, if you look at patients have decided, you provide me services at home. Why do I need to come to hospital for a consult? I save time, I save money, and that's important. It's convenient. Home collection of samples, home delivery of medicines, consults across the spectrum. We saw that in the US where, telemedicine grew as much as 1,000% in March, 4,000% in April. UK, where conventionally GP consults have been telemedicine about 20%, and that became 70%. So that's impressive. In counseling, whether it's dietetic or whether it's a psychologist assessing. So patients are now very open. They're open to new ideas. When we started talking about I stay in a hotel, taking over 5,000 rooms to be able to manage COVID patients, people said, that's never going to happen. But this really served to provide a service which was essential, and there was adoption like we had not imagined. And the openness to embrace technology. The COVID risk scan that we had 16 million downloads. Now, this is a figure that you don't normally visualize in India, where you'll have that kind of adoption and so quickly. Turning to healthcare providers, administrators, medical directors, earlier on, you used to have this concept, face-to-face meeting, okay, fly to Chennai, Hyderabad, Kolkata, what have you. Now everything's virtual. We're saving time, cost, of course, and the productivity has improved considerably because this concept of a virtual meeting has now become acceptable to everyone. Teams, I think, have become more cohesive than we had in the past. Protocols are shared, protocols are developed. And let me give you an example of COVID management. Initially we had to change our protocol once a week. We are in the 33rd version of our clinical treatment protocol for COVID. And when the recovery trial data came out from UK, we had a virtual meeting in the middle of the night and made a recommendation to start steroids from the next morning. Now, how would that have happened if it wasn't virtually? If you look at virtual monitoring of how we run the hospital, if you look at quality initiatives, for example, we have several JCI accredited hospitals, and we had virtual accreditation done for the first time for a new hospital, our Proton Center. And when we approached JCI and said, do a virtual, they said, that's so difficult to do, but they accepted the idea, and Proton Center in Chennai became the first virtually accredited Joint Commission International Hospital. And then, of course, so many of our hospitals have got re-accredited. So, virtual accreditation is happening. And I think my last point is about the knowledge that is easily available to individuals today, and how that's going to be a game changer. So just pause for a second and look at the kind of scientific data we have. We have 116,000 papers on COVID published in PubMed. That's 258 per day, because COVID's been around for 450 days. So by the time we finish this session, 5 papers would have been published, because more than 10 papers are published every year. Now, if you're a consumer and you have diabetes, you go on to Google, you will get 459 million results. You Google treatment for diabetes, you get 360 million results. Now, if you're interested in COVID, you type COVID, you get 5 billion results, and for treatment, 3 billion. So although diabetes was first described in 1500 BC, we know 10 times more about COVID than we know about diabetes. Our channels where we put out information had 75 million impressions. So clearly, access to information, how easily it's available, how credible it is really going to play an important role in how patients are going to choose providers and also doctors. So I believe digital health is really going to pave the way for the next phase of medicine. 60% of all diseases in India are non-communicable. When it comes to chronic disease management, managing so many conditions from hypertension, dyslipidemia, diabetes, digital health, through our sugar program. Yeah, I'm just ending. 10 seconds. If we look at sugar management, we saw glycosylated hemoglobin come down when we virtually manage these patients. So I think digital capability to provide 360-degree care and meet the needs, or should I say the demands of the consumer, who's really discerning today, is really going to decide how a particular provider is going to grow. Over to you, Karan.
Thank you, Anupam. I have a bunch of questions, but I think we'll run out of time. So I just want to make sure we do justice with Shishir and with Shashank. So Shishir, we haven't talked about the MedTech's role in enabling digital primary care or transforming health and wellness centers, or looking at value products for the mass market. So help us a little bit and give us the MedTech perspective, please. Shishir, you may be on mute.
Thank you, Karan, and NatHealth for giving me the opportunity to be on the panel today. And it's great to be on the same platform as Praveenji, Anupam, and several others, and also Shashank. And from a MedTech perspective, let me be very honest about it. I think COVID made sure that the possibilities of tomorrow became requirements for us today. And this is something which is very transformative for everyone. As Dr. Sibal said, the transformation towards digital health, telehealth really was transformed. The acceleration, the adoption was very fast, and it became the lifeline in times of social distancing. See, collaboration and partnerships happened and across not only industries, but with regulators also. And that is something which was very heartwarming. As early as March, we saw telehealth practice guidelines coming out so soon. And at the same time, home care monitoring for COVID started, which expanded even for cardiac home monitoring now, which is pursued by many organizations today in terms of bringing those solutions to the patients and providers. So if you look at it, hospital recuperation is now shifting to home convalescence. But at the same time, the government started on this fantastic journey of creating almost 150,000 health and wellness centers. But the key here will be to make sure that the time to care is less than 30 minutes. And for that, a lot of technology will be required. Although I know there is the NDH is going on, but MedTech can facilitate the use of appropriate technology for improved access, not only for advice and treatment, but also to enable reporting, recording, and eventually progressing to EHRs for individuals and families. This will not only help us to focus on digital interconnectivity, but also ensure seamless care during patient journey. Giving examples of value solutions, see, I would talk about value solutions as something which are not low price, more directed towards improving outcomes, reducing costs, errors, etc. One of the examples that comes to my mind is from the nutraceutical industry, where artificial intelligence is really playing a transformative role, even in India. The major role is to target specific health disorders so that a more personalized nutrition solution is provided to the user also. And this is done almost in real-time analysis of a patient's activity, diet, lifestyle, health goals, and even past record of genetic makeup. And this is something which is going to accelerate not only in that field, but also across several interventional products also. We've seen the advent of a lot of sensors, actuators, etc. And these are the technologies which will become more and more driven as med devices will continue to evolve to make sure that the world, even after COVID, is a completely different place for patients. And this is something that all of us must be looking forward to, and the med device industry in India is here to play a big role. We've seen a lot of Make in India also. A lot of, I would say, low-tech, high-volume products are already getting manufactured. With the right government impetus, it is going to accelerate further. It might be some time before high-tech, low-volume products could be made in India more acceptable. But we've seen the example of the COVID vaccine. They were accepted more by the emerging economy rather than the developed. And I believe that is the way the med device industry in India is also heading for. So let's look at the best. And I would only say that med devices in India is at a strong pivot, and with the right government support, it is going to play a more important role.
That's great to hear, Shishir. Thank you. Shashank, I'm going to give you the last word. 3 questions for you. One is, help us paint the picture of what's the health tech outlook and learnings from countries like China. Second, what are the big, bold, transformative business model changes you would expect? And then what are challenges? What are the biggest challenges for startups like you or unicorns like you?
Thanks, Karan and NatHealth for having me on this panel, and it's good to be on a panel with Dr. Praveen, Dr. Anupam, and Shishir. So let me start. I think we've already covered some of the impact that COVID has had on digital health. What I can definitely share going forward is that we saw a 5x to 10x growth in teleconsultations, e-pharmacy, diagnostics. But even after all this, the overall percentage of digital transactions compared to offline transactions is still in its early single digits. And in terms of value, it is even smaller. It's probably around 2 to 3%. So I think the first thing out is this itself will grow significantly to double-digit numbers in the coming years. But once this is I think the second big shift that I see happening is the complete unbundling of the specialized play. And you look at the healthcare delivery market, I think as there's going to be more online penetration, there's going to be an unbundling that's going to take place. And this unbundling will mean that there's going to be direct to consumer brands. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, I think Shishir, see some disturbance from your side. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Karan. So with this, I think the second big shift that we are going to be seeing is going to be the unbundling of the healthcare delivery side. Consumers getting more and more comfortable with direct-to-consumer brands, online brands, and this is going to see specialized companies coming in. There would be companies who are even more super specialized in terms of companies that are focusing on, let's say, hernia, companies focusing on just diabetes, and we're going to see this unbundling of the whole healthcare delivery spectrum. And the third thing that, and one of the factors that's going to be supported by this is when we measure the CSATs, in the long tail of healthcare, which is a very fragmented space, and we look at utilization of physical assets, there is still, both are very poor, and there's still a lot of progress to be made. And I think this gives me confidence that there's going to be a lot of specialized delivery companies coming in. Also, with the fundamental rails of e-consultation, e-pharmacies, and e-diagnostics, the third trend that I'm seeing is a unified continuous care being built on top of this. Now that you don't need to, there are a lot of horizontal companies in the form of e-pharmacies and e-diagnostic and e-consultations. Other companies can stitch very interesting care modules on top of this, and again, go deeper into specialized solutions. And this will also bring, I think, this digitalization will also bring a lot of non-healthcare individuals, entrepreneurs and technology enthusiasts into the space, and we'll see a lot of collaboration between doctors and non-healthcare folks. And I'm sure that'll lead to a lot of innovation that we're all looking forward to. When you talk about China, Karan, one of the things that we have seen is as healthcare has gotten more digitalized, the delivery and the payers have kind of intermixed very well. And that's another trend that, maybe it's like I think in your chart, you mentioned how India is maybe about 5 to 10 years behind China. I think that's something that we might get to see as healthcare delivery gets digitalized. When you think about, these are the couple of observations that I had to make. And I think Dr. Praveen covered the role NDHM will play in all of this. I personally believe that the real leapfrog that India can make is if we can get NDHM successful. NDHM is something that nobody in the world has ever attempted it. Forget pulling it off. So I think it's a bold vision, it's a bold mission, and if we can pull it off, I think in a lot of areas we'll see a true leapfrog. Things as with NDHM, data interoperability will allow us to make micro insurance plans, and these insurance plans will help us make healthcare more affordable. And also this data today is siloed into different healthcare companies. When stitched together, can also help improve and provide personalized healthcare. And the data can actually be used and synthesized with AI to provide truly personalized and precision medicine. Coming into what challenges we see, I think that the world for digital startups has been, can be described as pre-COVID and post-COVID now. So in the post-COVID world, we see regulations being relaxed, focus being given on how to remove roadblocks in this innovation that digital healthcare is undergoing. And I truly believe that if NDHM is implemented in its full spirit and capability, I think digital startups will flourish in the country. We all realize how many different problems are there in healthcare. So it will require thousands and thousands of startups and thousands of healthcare companies to come up to really address the magnitude of the problem that we have. And NDHM can really enable that for us. So I'm a big believer in that. Thanks, Karan.
So, Zhang, I like your post-COVID description. So I hope you're exactly right there. But thank you. Aishwarya, do we have time for questions? I see Anish and a bunch of Charu and a bunch of people, Himanshu on.
I'm afraid not, because we have the Joint Drugs Controller India for the next session who's chairing us also on board with us. So, sir, we have to actually move on to the next session, I'm afraid.
Thank you all. Appreciate everyone joining. So we'll pass it on to the next section.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our moderator very much, Mr. Karan Singh, for bringing the best from this very eminent panel and making it such an informative discussion. I'd also like to thank our chair, Dr. Praveen Gedam, Additional CEO, National Health Authority, and the eminent experts who were here with us sharing their insights. Thank you very much once again.